Hi, I'm Beck and I'm a property investor.
And I'm Daria. I own my own home and I'm curious about investing.
We're the hosts of Investors in the Wild.
We've heard it all before. Build your wealth, get expert advice, learn about high yield, high growth investments, blah, blah, blah.
That's just not us. We're real mates with real talk about real estate. No ego, no financial advice.
It's all about wins you can use right now.
Let's get into it.
Hello, welcome back to Investors in the Wild. Today, we're back with the wonderful Michelle for part 2. If you haven't listened to episode 34 yet, do yourself a favor, go back there first. Michelle is one of those guests who makes you feel like you're not alone in this. She's honest, she's funny, and she drops some really practical insights about what apartment investing looks like. It's a cracker of an episode. Now, in this episode, Michelle takes us somewhere a little unexpected. She's got a story that starts with a decision that most investors may not ever take, hits a moment where everything feels completely stuck, and then takes a turn that genuinely surprises both Daria and I. We also get into Subdivision, which I know sounds intimidating. I find it intimidating, but the way Michelle breaks it down makes it feel more within reach than what you'd think. Let's get into it.
I am very grateful to have met my mother-in-law because she's a very avid property investor, and her approach had been buying properties, holding them long-term, subdividing, and then redeveloping. And I got quite inspired. At the time, I had also read Positively Geared, and I was like, okay, going out to buy a piece of land and going to think about knocking it down and then subdividing and then redeveloping. So
Getting palpitations. You make it sound so easy. The other thing is I've never heard I'm grateful for my mother-in-law. You don't hear that often, so well done. A couple of wins here to be proud of.
So again, maybe a bit of a horror story as well. Bought this plot of land within a very, very old house up in Newcastle, and I bought it sight unseen. I did no building and pest report
Can I
because
just check, Daria, do you know what that means to buy sight unseen?
Like you have not gone into it. You haven't looked at it. You haven't seen it. Someone else has basically given you that advice to purchase it and you've just gone with it blind. Yeah?
yeah, the best I got was like a
Yeah,
FaceTime call from the real estate agent.
Okay. And no pest or building report.
No, because I was thinking, okay, I'm going to go knock this building down. In fact, I was like, I do not.
True. Oh my God. Yes. Okay. Sorry. I forgot. Yes. You're going to knock it down.
Knock it down.
Okay.
Yep.
So what could the risks be then? Could there be asbestos?
Always asbestos.
Okay. So sight unseen sort of makes sense then now.
I was mostly looking at it online. What are the dimensions of the property? What's the width of the property? What's the zoning of the property? The flooding? But I didn't go to look at it. And I purchased it, and then I did the scenario analysis. And I'm someone who gets quite anxious with taking on too much debt. And I was like, okay, I don't think I am ready to take on this level of debt. And so I was like, let me just park it and wait until I feel like I have a bit more of a financial buffer. Then I'll be less anxious about the level of debt I'm taking on. And so I had left it empty for 6 months at this point. And my mother-in-law was like, Michelle, what are you doing? Why are you leaving this beautiful home empty? And I was like, there's no kitchen. She's like, that's easily solved. We can help you put a kitchen in. I was like, I'm not ready. I can't afford to spend like a whole lot of money to put a kitchen in and then only a couple of years to knock it down. And then all that money goes to waste.
You'd built on that land, is that right?
No, I hadn't built on that land. It was the same house.
The existing house, sight unseen. And so your idea was, I'm going to save up and I'm going to make sure I'm not in a position to have debt to then knock it down and rebuild. And then in the interim, you've left it empty and your mother-in-law is like, why have you left it empty? And your concern is that in this sight unseen building, there's no kitchen.
Yeah.
Okay.
So I can't rent it out.
So while you're waiting to build your wealth to then knock it down and subdivide it, you're going to, okay, this is great. I love this story. Yeah. So
thank you for the clean summary of that. I wanted to build up my savings a little bit more. Then my mother-in-law was like, you don't need to spend like $15,000, $20,000 on a kitchen. You can get one off Marketplace and we can help put it together for you. And so I purchased a kitchen off Marketplace for $500. And then I got a builder in Again, someone my mother-in-law recommended, thank you for all the advice, who put it in for another $500. And then my father-in-law is a tiler, so he helped put the splash back in. And I thought it was impossible. It went from like me thinking it was completely impossible to rent it out, and I'd just have to deal with another painful mistake of not having any income on a mortgaged asset because of my poor decision making beforehand, to my mother-in-law being like, nothing's a problem, it's all good, we have a plan, you can do this. And so I think very quickly after that, I was able to get tenants in, and I'm so glad I did that because I still haven't built, and it's been like 3 years. So imagine if I had left that mortgaged asset untenanted for the last 3 years.
Another gold nugget from Michelle. Michelle's mother-in-law didn't hand her some mystical formula. She just said, hey, we can work through this and here's how. And that changed everything. The people around you who invest, who've made the mistakes, who knows someone, that network is genuinely one of your most valuable assets. And if you don't have that yet, start building it. Talk to people, ask questions. And this is exactly why we started Investors in the Wild. We are your network. Every guest, every story, every mistake shared on this podcast, it's all here so we can learn from each other and none of us have to figure it out alone. If you ever want to talk about this stuff, please reach out. We're always happy to talk.
My mind is boggled. My makeup costs $500. You can get a whole kitchen for $500. Do you have a photo of this kitchen? Can you send it to us?
Yeah.
I'd love to see this kitchen. And what does a $500 kitchen entail? What is it? Is it like
all the cupboards? It had all the cupboards. It has everything you need. The cupboards.
Does it have a stove?
Yeah, it does have a stove.
Oh my God.
I think this shows a couple of things. Sometimes it is useful to dive in and then figure it out. But then it also shows, Michelle, I know we've spoken about this as well, how much you need connections along the way. Because for $1,000, you solved something that you thought was unsolvable, but only because someone said to you, we can work through this. Your mother-in-law sounds like an angel. If you hadn't had that connection, it would have been years of lost rent.
Yeah, it would have been.
I was like, Daria bought a rusty Louis Vuitton bracelet that literally went green in under a month for $1,250. Michelle went and bought an entire kitchen and is now making money off of a property 3 years later. Okay, people listening to this is where you need to invest. Buy kitchens from Marketplace. I'm actually going to jump on to Marketplace and look for kitchens. That is crazy. I might get one for my bedroom.
And then we need to find a mother-in-law for you, Daria, who can also be your guardian angel.
A mother-in-law. I would even take a mother-in-law without her son just to have a network. It's really, and so, Daria, you must. But that's really great. I really want to see your kitchen. So it's functioning and people can use it. That's crazy.
You can find pretty good kitchens on Marketplace because these people are doing kitchen renos, and it costs money to dispose of your old kitchen, which may be like perfectly functioning and very usable and very clean and very well maintained. You just want to do a kitchen reno. And so you have these beautiful, well-maintained kitchens that are available, and to them it's a benefit as well, because otherwise it would have cost them money to dump it at
That's amazing. I mean, look, we went in, so my family went to
Can I just show you this?
Oh yes.
Kitchen, 145 bucks.
Wow. Oh my God, that one looks good, though, 145.
Free kitchen and cooktop, like that's fine.
What the actual? So we were looking at a house at Newport Beach, and they had 2 sections. And this is one of the, Beck, when we were talking about in our other episode about how one part of the house is done beautifully and it's properly maintained and properly thought out. And then the second part had been advertised like 2 living areas, 2 kitchens, multiple bathrooms, and like multiple bedrooms. Then we've gone into the house and we're like, okay, where's the kitchen in this second area? And they're like, oh, the owners took it with them. And I was like, what? How do you take a kitchen with you? And it must have been one of these Marketplace kitchens. He built a little kitchenette and he's taken it with him. And I'm like, okay, well, then it shouldn't be advertised that you've got 2 kitchens. And also, what kind of a kitchen can go where you go? And so I just didn't, this is a whole world, an area that I've had no experience in. I didn't know you could do that. You build little kitchens, you transport them to wherever you go. The kitchen follows you. It's great.
I didn't know this either.
You didn't know either. Hey, Beck, and you're like quite the property mogul here.
I had no idea you could buy a kitchen off Marketplace. This is the first time I've looked, and that's a very decent kitchen for $145. Like, I'm learning a lot this morning.
This is
It's a big
mind-blowing.
morning.
I feel like you're my new guru. You can be my mother.
No,
You can be my mother-in-law.
I am the person that's made all the mistakes you could possibly make.
I love that, Michelle. You're now Daria's mother-in-law. So let your mother-in-law know that she's been a very good influence. You're following in her footsteps. You now have a daughter-in-law.
You can pass the baton on, let her know that the baton's been passed and now you're holding it and you're my mother-in-law. Please advise me, Michelle.
The student has become the teacher.
Sensei.
No. I have so much to learn. I have not had many wins, but I'm just going to keep at it.
What has been your best purchase and why?
What has been my best purchase and why? It's just sad to say there is no clear outstanding winner. They've all been, so one has been a drastic loss, and then the others have been very modest wins, and I'm okay with that. I go into property, I expect, like, you need to put in hard work, you need to have time in the market for something to grow. And so I'm not expecting instantaneous big wins. And so I talk to, say, like my brother or my partner, and they have purchased properties that have had much more growth than my properties have had. But it doesn't make me feel like, oh, let me just sell this property and do exactly what they've done, because no one really knows anything about property. So take what I'm saying with a grain of salt. But other people say property is a cycle. And so you'll have areas that will have periods of growth. You'll have areas that will have periods of no growth, but it cycles. As long as like the core value is like a desirable location with land, and you have the cash flow to sustain the growth. And also, if your strategy is to not wait for the market, but to manufacture equity by subdividing and redeveloping, then that works out. So I think for me, it's more, I love hearing other people's stories. So I'm like, okay, that's a good learning. I now know, like, buying in a place like Western Sydney, where there's a lot of development going in for the Western Sydney Aerotropolis, or like the new airports, the new hub. A lot of people have had massive growth from that. And then I'm also learning, like, maybe townhouses are a good investment. So my partner bought a townhouse, and maybe it's a good investment because it's in the really affordable bracket. I'm not really answering a question, but I haven't had a hugely successful win. They've all been modest gains, but I am hopeful for the future.
But net, you've made gains, right? So these modest gains have all come together to give you, because you wouldn't be doing it if you weren't gaining something out of it. So your approach, it's a slow burn approach, and it's working. This is why you're my mother-in-law now. How close are you now to subdividing that Marketplace kitchen property?
My goal is this year.
That's amazing.
Yeah.
Oh my God, we should have you back again to describe that journey once you.
I'm sure there'll be more horror stories to share. I'm mentally preparing myself for a world of ups and downs.
You're going to be great. You're very cool, calm, and collected. It's going to be great. Imagine building a real kitchen. Actually, no, forget that. Just get 2 Marketplace kitchens.
All right. I want to get into the subdivision piece a little bit more.
Let's do it.
Why were you drawn to subdivision? I find the thought of subdivision really intimidating. For me, that feels very out of my comfort zone.
Maybe it's my personality. I feel like I get really hot-headed, and then I go into something very optimistic. This can only work out. I get less worried about what could go wrong. I'm also really lucky because I feel like in moments where things have gone wrong, I've had my parents and my family to lean on. And so it doesn't feel scary. It feels like I've got someone catching me on the other side. And so going into this subdivision, I had read Positively Geared. I'd seen my mother-in-law do it. I'm like, wow, this sounds exciting. It sounds like a really fantastic learning opportunity. And even if I'm not making any money from it, I'm learning, and it's increasing the yield, and it's something I plan to hold long term. So I'm not relying on all the numbers having to work out in the short term. There's also time in the market that can catch me as well. That's why I didn't feel too scared about going to subdivision.
Again, it makes such a difference when you've got people around you to work through problems with and maybe lean on financially if you need to, worst case scenario. It makes it a lot safer.
Absolutely. Having my mother-in-law there giving advice like, don't make these mistakes, try this out. We know someone that can do it for a lot cheaper. And we're at a time where so many resources, information are at our fingertips. So many times I've gone into ChatGPT and like, please do this scenario analysis for me, or please do a development project plan for this building. And we're just so lucky with the amount of resources we have.
I'm going to ask some really dumb questions. What exactly does subdivision mean? Does it basically just mean doing a whole bunch of forms and paperwork with an architect and a surveyor and a lawyer? Really 101, what is subdivision and what does it involve?
I'm also still learning about this, but my current understanding is I am actually going to go the route of finding a project home builder. I want to go down that route because I think it will cost me less. These are people that mass produce homes and they have a very well-oiled process and machine for making this happen. I want to go to that project home builder with the proposal of, can you help me subdivide and build the properties on the land? And my understanding with these project home builders is they have town planners, they have architects, they have stormwater engineers. It's part of the normal process they would need to go through. And subdivision is something that their town planner can help with. I've called up a couple project home builders and they're like, yep, this is something we can help you with. And what helps beforehand is going to a town planner to validate that what you're planning to do is a viable option. And they will compare it with all the planning legislation and guidelines in your council area to ensure that it is feasible. And they will outline things like, okay, your land is sloping away from the road, and so you're going to have a stormwater engineer take a look at it. They'll also clearly outline what your council contribution fees would be. I think council contribution fees was not something I expected going into it, but they're a really, really large sum. I can't remember for the life of me, but they're like somewhere between $30,000 and $90,000. It's a really significant sum of money. And so they help outline outside of build costs, these are the other fees you'll need to factor into your budget.
That's so useful.
Another gold nugget here. If subdivision is something you're seriously considering, listen to Ilya's episodes number 30 and 32. He has actually subdivided and he's doing it again. One of the biggest tips, do the subdivision with the builder who's going to do the build. The reason is simple, they're motivated to get the subdivision done quickly because the build is where they make their money. So they're not dragging their feet, they've got the team, they've done it end-to-end multiple times. You're getting involved with a team who knows this and has done this a million times.
And so this is interesting because I almost feel like it's a shift in strategy for you, the way that you spoke about subdivision. You were saying, or maybe it isn't. I feel like historically you've been focused on, all right, how do you buy an asset that's going to accrue in value and don't worry too much about the yield because the capital gains are where it's at. Whereas I feel like people do subdivisions because it increases the yield. And so the focus is on the yield, or does it help with the capital gains as well? Because it's just so much more expensive as well to subdivide and build.
It is. Someone who is experienced in subdivision will probably think of it as a way to, if they're planning to hold, it's a way to manufacture equity, but also a way to increase your yield. So to me, it felt like a solution that would tick both boxes. Whereas if I were to buy and hold, depending on the property, you can add a room to increase the yield and increase the value. I think for some of the properties I bought, it's harder, especially with apartments. It's more like waiting for time in the market. And so it felt like subdivision was a strategy where I was in control and I wasn't waiting for factors outside of my control to do their thing.
You can add the value and you can increase the value. That's why I prefer houses as well, because even if it's further out, even if it's less desirable, you can still control more. I remember talking to a commercial investor, and his strategy, he'll say everyone will buy a building for $2 million. I would rather buy a rundown building for $1 million, spend $500,000 fixing it up, and instantly it'll be worth $2 million and I've made $500,000. And I feel like I've really enjoyed that learning and being like, I like being able to buy something that's undervalued, add value to it, and then enjoy those gains. And that's really difficult to do in an apartment. Whereas in a house, you just have so much more at your disposal. And that's even without the subdivision angle.
Absolutely. We'll see what the numbers look like. The other part of the property journey I really like is it feels like a way to step outside your comfort zone, to learn about things that you wouldn't otherwise have an opportunity to learn. Mistakes are okay because I just really enjoy the process of learning, and it feels more like a passion.
But it only becomes more fun the more comfortable you get with it.
To enjoy it, you got to be expecting the unexpected and seeing your growth. If you had asked me 5 years ago, I just got a building report on a property I purchased, and it was like, the roof needs replacing, the piers are sinking, and the drainage on the property is not working. You got to have a drainage specialist come. I would have been so intimidated by that. But now I think of it as like oh, okay, these are solvable problems. Replace the roof, it's a very common thing. Sinking piers, it's also a common problem in that council area because it's clay soil.
I've bought 2 places where the piers under the house are tilting. And I remember the first time being like, holy shit. And now I'm like, oh, chuck a couple grand at it, solved.
Yeah. And the more you learn that these are solvable problems, the more comfortable you're like, this is just a fun challenge.
Yeah, I agree. I've really loved this conversation. I've had fun.
Michelle, we need to have you on again because I've got lots more questions to ask you about everything. Michelle, it was such a pleasure to meet you. Thank you so much. I really, really enjoyed this session and I did get a lot out of it.
Same here. Lovely to meet you, Daria. I've heard your voice through many a podcast and I'm glad I got to finally meet you.
I'm so glad I got to meet you too, mother-in-law. Let's have tea soon.
No.
Have a good day. I'll talk to you soon.
Thank you, Beth. Catch you later.
See you, Michelle. Bye.
And that's a wrap for part 2 with Michelle. Let's talk through the gold nuggets. Number 1, before you decide something is unsolvable, talk to someone who's been in it. The right connection at the right time can completely change the trajectory of an investment. Second, if subdivision is on your radar, get a town planner involved early. And listen to Ilya's episodes on subdivision. They're episodes 30 and 32. And to everyone listening, you know the drill. This isn't financial advice. Always do your own research and find us on Instagram at Investors in the Wild. Have a lovely next few days and see you next week.